So I think it's the same sort of
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting in public of the Northern Ireland Policing Board. As you already know, it's been an extremely busy couple of weeks since we returned to business, not least from the issues arising from disclosure, from historic cases, and the appointment of your replacement Chief Constable. As a board, we've agreed to keep the issue of legacy on the agenda following the special meeting that we held last week. And yesterday, board members had a very positive meeting with the Chief Inspector of Criminal Justice to provide views on the scope of the review, and we welcome that report, which will be completed in approximately 4 to 5 months' time. Now, this morning we spent the majority of our private session with the senior team talking about budget and resources, and members share your frustration, Chief, at the lateness of the notification of a budget settlement for the next financial year and all of the associated issues and problems that brings. We will be pursuing that matter further with the Department of Justice and with the Controller and Auditor General, as this does have serious implications for how you are going to do business in the next year. We are now on the countdown to the EU exit, so there are some questions on that. We had some discussion, I think, this morning, and we hope to host a stakeholder seminar with the PSNI on that issue before the end of the month, because the PSNI have done a lot of work in preparation for whatever happens. We have your report, Chief, and if you're happy that we don't take any introductory comments, we will just go straight to questions, because there are quite a lot.
On your hands, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. So we'll just move straight to questions if people are content, and we go first to Keith Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair and Chief Constable. It's very poignant today. We meet 10 years after the anniversary of the murder of the 2 soldiers in Nazarene. Both those gentlemen got up in the morning to serve their country, and that was their aims that day. 30 years ago from today, in Coke, 3 gentlemen got up in the morning, one a businessman to sell as many second-hand cars as he could, that was his job, and 2 other pensioners. Their main aim was to get up and live that day. The village of Coke was decimated by the brutal murder of businessman Leslie Dallas, who was 39, Rick Rankin, 72, and Austin Nelson at 62. 2 years later, on the 3rd of June 1991, 3 men got up to carry out murder. That was their intention that day. As members of the Division IRA, they then met the SAS who were waiting on them later in Coke. 2 of these examples got up to live and serve our community. The latter got up to carry out murder. What confidence can the Chief Constable give to the innocent victims of our past that their families will get answered?
Well, I think the issues of legacy, the various strands to it, of inquests, civil litigation, criminal justice investigations, where they all best sit, has been the subject of much commentary in the last few weeks, not least, of course, because of the controversy and the PSNI feelings over disclosure of material to the Police Ombudsman in relation to his investigation into the Sean Graham bookmakers atrocity. I'm just conscious that every day is an anniversary for somebody in this place. In fact, you're right to talk of the 10-year anniversary of the 2 sappers murdered at Nazarene, but also on Saturday coming, many of us in PSNI will be remembering the murder of Stephen Carroll 10 years ago on Saturday. So I accept that people feel like they haven't got answers. People feel like they haven't got justice. They haven't got truth, perhaps, right across the full spectrum of those that were involved in the period known as the Troubles or the conflict. And that pain is borne by everybody who has lost someone in a very similar way, regardless of the circumstances. I'm not saying that the circumstances don't matter. What I am saying is that loss and grief and pain is something that all of those left behind, where their loved ones have met what appears to be an early untimely death, murder in many circumstances. That pain is something that all of those people from a diverse range of backgrounds and roles in the period of the Troubles share. We will do our part. We take our responsibility around these investigations seriously. We don't think we're best placed to do it. We don't think we're resourced to do it. We think it's having an impact on our ability to keep people safe today. But nor do I want that to sound like a long list of excuses for not giving families and people who are grieving the answers that they need or the justice that they seek. So I can assure you that we will, until there's a political decision taken to remove this investigative responsibility away from the police service, we will fulfill that to the best of our ability, balancing the demands of that against trying to protect children, vulnerable people, deal with cyber crime, deal with serious sexual offences, respond to domestic abuse, and the full range of normal, sadly, normal day-to-day policing demand. So we do have a sizable budget. We can always do with more. None of our budget is specifically ring-fenced for legacy matters. We have to balance and prioritise all of this in a competing way against legacy investigations and our responsibilities for today's and tomorrow's policing. So I can assure you that we take it seriously. I can assure you that we're open to play a constructive part in helping those in government charged with the creation and the implementation of the creation of the legislation to implement the Stormont House Agreement. We'll not be found wanting in our contribution to that, and I think that's obvious from our response to the consultation, which we made public. And other than to agree with you on the loss that people are feeling around the death of their loved ones, especially people who get up in the morning to do a good day's work with no evil or violent intent, and then to be taken from their families in such a brutal way. My heart goes out to them, but I acknowledge the pain, the grief, the suffering of all of those left behind who have lost loved ones as a result of the conflict.
We move to Tom Frawley.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Constable, at your last open public meeting with us, you spoke to the issue of the No Stone Unturned investigation that is being undertaken on your behalf, or on behalf of the PSNI by the Durham Constabulary, and gave a commitment that you would arrange for the Chief Constable to come and speak to us about that particular process. What I'm interested in is that I've had the, I think, rather unsettling experience of the Talkback program this week, which focused on that, and particularly the perspective of the two journalists who are clearly the subject of some of those inquiries. And again, something that was alluded to in our last exchange, the whole scale of the process. And I think it's therefore quite important that we have a date and an arrangement to allow us to explore those issues with the Chief Constable. Do you have any sense when that might be?
Well, I made the offer to the board, having previously discussed with Chief Constable Barton that he and senior investigators would be willing to be answerable to the policing board. I was sort of waiting on you, deciding if that's what you wanted to do. So that's not stalling, it's just the courtesies of how these arrangements are made. You referred to the Talkback programme, which I think was Monday. I heard it myself I have a very fine line to tread here in relation to independence, because it would be meaningless for me to offer the independence and ask for the independence of Durham Constabulary and then to go dabbling. However, I do accept that in the legislation and in front of this board, I am ultimately responsible for that investigation. I don't duck that responsibility. I accept it. So when I hear the sorts of things that I've heard and talked back, it causes concern for me. And I want to take the opportunity in a few seconds, Chair, if I may, to put the record straight on some inaccuracies that were in that talkback programme. So I have the full transcript here, and it says that, I'm paraphrasing for the purpose of time, but in terms of the numbers of police officers, dozens, over 100 deployed, wrong. At Mr Bernie's address, there were 11 officers deployed. There were over 20 rooms across 4 floors to be searched. There were 9 officers at the address of Mr McCaffrey, and there were 19 at the business premises related to these 2 gentlemen. That's a total of 39 officers across 3 different premises, many of them with multiple rooms. It was done in a low-key way. There were no liveried or marked police cars deployed. There were no police uniform, high profile, high visibility jackets other than normal search suits, which is as much a health and safety requirement as anything else. There was no damage caused at all. In fact, the business premise search was delayed while officers awaited the arrival of staff to do it in cooperation with them rather than damage doors or forced entry to the premises. In anticipation, police have body-worn footage of the entry search and the interaction with staff. That footage across both the domestic houses rebuts all of the assertions made regarding the detainees' treatment during the time of the search. There was no nakedness. The method of arrest, the conduct of the officers from that body-worn video, I think shows that it was proportionate and that it was necessary, and it was Durham Constabulary on my behalf with my officers under their direction and control acting under the law. I could go on. That's the first of 8 points that I have here. The Chair reminded me of the standing orders that I've got 3 minutes for answers. So that fetters me somewhat. I'm also fettered out of respect for the judicial review process that is ongoing, in which many of these issues will be ventilated. So that judicial review is taken by the journalists, who we have no agenda against other than fulfilling our responsibilities under Section 32 of the Police Act. But they exercise their right to judicially review our right to have, amongst other things, right to have the material seized as part of this investigation. So that judicial process has actually had the effect of pressing pause on the investigation. So one of the reasons for the delay, which people are understandably concerned about, is because we're awaiting the judicial review outcome to decide on the lawfulness of us having the material. And I would say, and this is a statement of fact, it doesn't compromise any proceedings, but the search warrant was signed by a senior judge after 3 days of deliberation, and it was a recorded hearing which has been shared as a result of the judicial review process. So all of this will work its way through due process. We want to be accountable. We had no agenda. We didn't go looking to do this investigation. It's an uncomfortable place to be arresting and searching journalists in a liberal democracy. I don't like doing it, but Section 32 of the Police Act compels me. And it's not just about theft of documents. There are other pieces of legislation that are engaged, and I don't want to contaminate either judicial review proceedings around the lawfulness of our actions, or indeed any potential criminal proceedings should the PPS choose to bring charges against the journalists.
Chairman, can I just say thank you, that's very comprehensive. But the onus lies with us then to ask you to invite Chief Constable.
And absolutely happy to do that, and I discussed that with him in the last week. We didn't fix a date. I didn't want to preempt the judge's wishes, or the board's wishes around timing and location and so on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We did discuss it yesterday, we've agreed, but just getting,
Sure.
finding
Okay.
a suitable time. Suitable. Philip?
Thank you. Just following on from Tom's question and notwithstanding your answer, I mean, there is and are serious concerns about the policing operation around this investigation. But my question is separate, because we would welcome the invitation to invite Chief Constable Barton here to properly question him and all this happening. You will have been copied into a letter, as were the board, from Emma Rogan MLA and also the daughter of one of the victims who tragically lost their lives that night in Loughinisland, to the Chief Constable of Durham, that when he comes over here to meet with the board, that he also accepts an invitation to go to Loughinisland to meet with the families of those who lost their lives that night. And I would hope that you would also support that invitation to take them to Loughinisland to meet with those families.
Well, that will be a call for Chief Constable Barton. This is, one of the limitations of contracting out an investigation. I can't pick and choose which decisions I take. I choose not to take any decisions, but he does know that he's answerable to me in the same way that I'm answerable to you. So that will be a call for Chief Constable Barton to take. And I haven't discussed that invitation with him, so I don't know his thoughts on it. I would be reminding him, though, that he and I, are the subject of judicial proceedings and public utterances, and in terms of the wealth of information that I'm sitting on here, just in relation to asking some accountability questions in the back of the talkback programme, are things that would not be able to be expressed publicly, or we would be deeply disrespectful to the court, the judicial review proceedings taken by the journalists. So we sort of can't have our pie eaten in this. I would love to be going out, calling a press conference and explaining lots of things that have been put into the media that are completely wrong, that they are at best a misinterpretation of what actually happened, and some of it factually wrong, as I have described by the small example of officer numbers and the profile of the searches. So I don't know what Chief Constable Barton's attitude would be to effectively a public meeting or a meeting with families concerned. I know that he has the same discomfort that I have around the pain that these families have been through, and then they get some ventilation of their story through this programme, and then on the back of it, following a report of a theft by the police ombudsman's office to us, we're then duty bound to do this. It's not a comfortable position to be, but it's our duty. We're fulfilling our legislative responsibilities. Certainly happy, Barton is happy to come here and be answerable to this board as far as he can be without undermining any proceedings. I think it would be a big ask of him, whilst the judicial review proceedings are ongoing, to be going into a more public forum with families and so on. But as I say, I can't second guess that, and I'm not trying to influence him. He will make the decision, otherwise it would make a mockery of me having given him the independence.
Gerry Kelly?
Thank you, Chair. Chief Constable, I'm sure you've been more aware that we're now dealing with, in the last 24 hours, 3 separate statements from the British Secretary of State, and I want to refer you to the first one. I have no wish to bring into any political dialogue in this, but it is a statement just to remind you where, when she was dealing with what she claimed was 90% non-state force, killings by non-state forces and under 10% by state forces, some of which I dispute, but nevertheless, in dealing with the state forces, she said they were people acting under orders and under instruction and fulfilling their duty in a dignified and appropriate way. Now, this is in the context of the last couple of weeks around legacy, the failure of disclosure, which is highly publicised, and indeed within, I think, a week of the decision being made around Bloody Sunday victims and whether there's going to be prosecutions in those cases. So it is precisely a a police question. I'm asking as Chief Constable, what is your reaction to that statement by the British Cycling?
Well, I don't consider myself to be a spokesperson for the British government or any arm of the state. I'm a police officer, I'm a public servant, and I do think it's important for all of us in public life, political leaders locally and at the UK level, to own their own words, and it's up to them to explain all of that. I do think it is valid for me as the Chief Constable, though, to give my view on accountability and investigative responsibility in cases where the law has been engaged, and certainly in cases where lethal force has been used. So in some ways, that's a very straightforward cops answer that I will give you. We believe in the European Convention on Human Rights. We accept the responsibilities of Article 2 as a public authority. We have a responsibility, and I know this is the subject of much discourse whenever we talk about legacy issues more generally, but I accept that as a police service, a body of constables, we have a responsibility to investigate thoroughly any circumstance where people have lost their life. I think we should all be equal under the law. I think, especially in circumstances where lethal force has been used, there should be a thorough and effective investigation. And we've got into the difficulty that we have because not all of the investigations were thorough and expeditious. Part of that was simply because of volume and the time that it was, but whatever the reason, it would be fair to say, and we have accepted on the back of many reports, that not all of the investigations were thorough and expeditious. But I think the position of the police should be that if a life has been taken, the life of one human being taken by another, that should be investigated. Now, if the killing is justified, if there is some reason for it, that the due process deems that it's a justified killing through prosecutorial decisions, which aren't ours, by the way, that's for the Public Prosecution Service, or indeed the courts, then that's a matter for them. But I can't accept or advocate for, nor would we want to be leading a police service that treated the death of any one individual differently to the death of another. I think if the circumstances are different, and therefore a different criminal justice outcome is warranted, so be it. That's the value of a liberal democracy in our process of law and due process. So the position that I have is if a death has occurred, we have a responsibility to investigate it and then allow due process to follow its course. In balance to that, you know, it would, and I'm not taking sides in this debate other than just saying the policing position. If police officers, soldiers, anybody else are on duty, lawfully possessing a firearm, doing a duty that has been required of them by the state, they should be accountable for their actions, but they're not unlawful. It's not unjustifiable that they're in that position. How they then choose to exercise the force, all of us should be subject to the law, whether state actor or non-state actor. That's the policing perspective on this, and not a political one.
Allow me to persist a moment. It was a very political answer. Also dealt with the policing, but I mean, to remind you, we are in the context of the last 2 weeks. To remind you, we are in the context of the last 48 hours. So can I ask you directly whether it was the British Secretary of State who said it, if you don't want to deal with that or not? Is it right or wrong to say that state forces are people acting on their orders and their instructions and fulfilling their duty in a dignified and appropriate way, no matter what they do, because that's what that statement says. And that is the difficulty in the statement that has caused huge hurt. And which is why I'm asking you as a police officer, as the police officer, Chief Constable, whether you agree or disagree with that statement.
I'm saying that it's up to individuals to give account for their own words. My position as a police officer is if a state actor, if a police officer or a soldier shoots someone, they should be investigated in compliance with Article 2 of the European Convention on Human Rights. In the same way that if a Republican or loyalist terrorist shoots someone, they should be investigated. If the killing is justified, it's justified. That's not my decision. We simply investigate and present the facts. I can't see what's political in taking that position. To me, it's a clear-cut position. It doesn't come in behind the Secretary of State. She has to explain her words. She has to own her words in the same way that all other political leaders do, and I have said so in recent weeks. So my position is we've got a very clear frame within which to operate called the criminal law, and it's reinforced through the European Convention on Human Rights, particularly Article 2, the right to life, not just for the state to uphold the right to life, but when a life has been taken, there's a state obligation to ensure a thorough and expeditious investigation. That's the standards that I want to work to. And if we don't, that's shortcoming on our part, and I'm not going to take any direction from politicians or anybody else on moving from the policing position. If politicians choose to take a different political position, matter for them, but I'm going to stick with the policing one.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chairperson. Following on, just Chief Constable, would you agree that the words of the Secretary of State were tantamount to political interference in the rule of law? And secondly, in terms of amnesty for state actors or others that committed murders in the past 30 to 40 years, I believe you're on record as saying that there ought to be no amnesty, that people should be held accountable before the law. Is that still your view and that of the PSNI?
Yes, I think on the amnesty, not in favour of it, but also believe that collectively, at a political level, at an investigative level, through the judiciary, there needs to be an acknowledgement and a dealing with expectations, if you like, of how likely it's going to be that we will get a criminal justice outcome in many of these legacy cases. It's going to be a very small percentage. And that's just an assessment, but I think it's a pretty obvious one that is difficult to argue with. So it's not in favour of an amnesty. I don't think people are going to get all the answers that they want or the justice that they want through the criminal justice process, and therefore the response needs to be more fulsome than that, more comprehensive, which is why we like the Stormont House agreement, and we would call again on the politicians to actually get on with making that happen, because I think that broader approach to dealing with legacy matters, first of all, it takes primary responsibility away from the police service, which I would welcome, but secondly, it deals with some of the reality around the passage of time, the decay of evidence, the decay of memories, for example, the fact, sadly, that some witnesses and victims are no longer with us. So all of that means that we need an honest appreciation of how likely a criminal justice outcome is. That's not to say that we should throw the criminal law out. If there is evidence of criminality, it should be pursued. And in relation to the comments of the Secretary of State, they're her comments, they're not mine, they're not my position, and I think I've articulated that clearly in response to Mr Kelly.
Okay, we move to Joanne Bunting, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chief Constable, I'm going to bring back to the present day and the murder of Mr Ogle in my constituency. In your report you cite more than 600 houses within the community have been visited, and that you've taken the time to provide community reassurance whilst gathering evidence. I'd like you to elaborate further with regard to the form the reassurance has taken, and how do you evaluate its impact?
Well, there's a lot of work, energy, resources going into this murder investigation. I'm going to ask ACC Gray, who's responsible for crime operations, to comment on the detail of it. My earlier comments refer, though as regards the impact on the Ogle family and the community of East Belfast, whether it's East Belfast or Loughinisland or any other seat of any atrocity, it's wrong, it shouldn't happen, and we should never lose the human impact that these mindless acts of terrorism and violence have on families, communities, on those left behind. But your questions around assurance and where we are with the investigation, as far as we can comment on that investigation, I'll ask Barbara to give some detail.
Thank you. And can I just reiterate the comments of the Chief Constable around the impact of such actions on families and local communities. But I think it is really worth highlighting that within 5 weeks of the murder, there have been 15 arrests. 2 individuals have been charged with murder and are remanded in custody. There have been over 20 searches related to this murder, and the investigation has been conducted at pace and is a diligent and thorough investigation, which has had quite a far-reaching impact. I think it's worthy also to say that the activities of East Belfast UVF are one of the highest priorities, not only for the Paramilitary Crime Task Force at this time, but also for the wider PSNI. That activity is only one part of the Tackling Paramilitary Programme, and I think that it is incumbent upon myself at this time as well to recognise the impact that such criminality is having on communities, but also to put a call out to community representatives and members of the communities to step forward and support that wider work of the Tackling Paramilitary Programme. We as a police service will play our part within that and seek to bring people to justice, as we are actively doing, but we will also step forward to offer as much support as we possibly can within community initiatives and grounded within community policing. But I think it is an opportunity to do that as we pursue those criminal justice outcomes. The work of Serious Crime Branch has, and the investigative team, as I say, has really taken pace. We've resulted in 2 charges for murder, and I hope that we will have more charges to follow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and ACC Greg. I suppose I'm still entirely clear where we're on the practical format of the reassurance piece. If you would kind of speak to that, but also I suppose in light of the subsequent threats made to Ryan Ogle, Mr Ogle's son, and ongoing intimidation to the family and associates of the family, do you consider that more needs to be done by the PSNI? And I appreciate that there's others involved in this too, to give the community confidence to come forward and to fully understand and appreciate that they absolutely will be supported by the full force of the law and the PSNI.
I think it's critical just to say, first of all, that anyone who is subject of intimidation, to appeal to them to step forward and make statements of complaint so as we can investigate and can give full investigative actions and consideration around any actions of intimidation. And it is really important that people come forward and do that. As regards wider reassurance actions, again, that's where I appeal to community representatives, to groups to come forward, help highlight how we can play a role at community policing level within that. As I say, at an investigative level, we have groups such as the UVF in East Belfast as one of our highest priorities for investigative actions. We will do everything that we can to bring individuals to justice, but we do need to have the cooperation of communities and individuals to come forward as well to highlight what their issues are and to make statements of complaint if that's possible. We work closely, as Serious Crime Branch, we work closely with district personnel who are uniformed police officers who continue to work at community level and to deal with all of those other matters that help within community or that happen within communities around domestic abuse, thefts, burglaries, and all of those wider protective issues. So we're absolutely committed to policing and to providing as much reassurance as we possibly can. And again, very open to ideas. If there are other ways that are suggested, we will go anywhere. We will speak to community groups at any level between district and between crime operations branch, but more than welcome to any invitations to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question follows on to some extent from Mr Ogle's murder. As I understand it, he was killed by multiple stabbings. We've seen reports in the media over the last while about massive rise in knife crime. I know London in particular has been mentioned, but I'd be interested to find out whether we are seeing here in Northern Ireland any particular increase in knife crime. If so, what is the PSNI's position regarding that? And also, are we linked in any way to the high-level discussions that are taking place elsewhere?
Yes, I'm going to ask Tim Nares to just give the detail on that. I suppose knife crime historically has not been was a concern to us. It hasn't had the prolific rises that other parts of the UK have seen. It might be because there are other instruments available to people to damage their fellow human beings with. But nonetheless, we do monitor this. We're keen to try to stay ahead of that. And Tim, is there any other detail around that?
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, I mean, to confirm what the Chief Constable said, when we saw those trends emerging across GB, we had a look at our figures. We're not seeing that trend here in Northern Ireland. However, I think it's still important that we engage around the debate around how we respond to violence. And I think a lot of the debate on the national stage around taking a preventative approach to reducing violence is important here. So, as the Chief said, I think whilst we're not seeing those trends emerging, we are very, very keen to challenge ourselves around how we work with partner agencies and the community and voluntary sector to prevent harm and prevent violence in communities and take the learning out of that and build that into our future operational activity.
Thank you. In relation to the recent murder of Mr David Murphy in the Ballymena area, can the Chief Constable confirm that the direct involvement of paramilitary groups is one line of inquiry being followed by its investigators?
Yes, the investigation into the murder of David Murphy, which happened on the 19th of February 2019, we have several lines of inquiry, and that would be one line of inquiry.
Wendy?
Chief Constable, we're on the cusp of International Women's Day, and a recent report published by PwC highlighted gaps in gender pay across both the public and private sector in Northern Ireland. I'd like to ask, what is the representation of women within the PSNI as PSNI officers, and how does that match with services across the UK? And also, what steps are being taken internally within your organisation to support and encourage career progression of women?
By way of opening comment, Yvonne Cook, who is our head of human resources and co-chairs our positive action group, along with Barbara actually, but we'll give Barbara a rest from speaking for a moment. So we take this seriously. We do have gender action plans. We have this coming right through our internal accountability to the Culture, Ethics and Diversity Board, which I chair personally. We take this seriously. We accept that we are underrepresented in terms of female officers, not so much on the police staff side, but and also that underrepresentation is more pronounced at more senior levels. So the fact that we have two female colleagues sitting this side of the table, for example, is indicative of that. And I'm going to be, almost not very much to say if I say much more, but there's a number of initiatives around mentoring, around positive action that we're undertaking. Yvonne, do you want to add?
Thank you, Wendy. We are underrepresented with women. That is comparable to the rest of town. To the rest of the police force and the services within the United Kingdom. There's significant work ongoing in terms of addressing that. One of the key pieces of work they're focusing on, which relates to a barriers to recruitment project, actually looks at reasons why women might apply in the first place and so how we can retain women within the organisation. There's also significant body of work within the organisation, we're looking at the underrepresentation of women within specialist role areas. And that has been going on in truth probably over the last decade. We've had gender action work within the organisation. Barbara and I have been working extensively on a significant piece of work looking at broad cultural issues of the organisation. And now we have an action plan which focuses specifically on Section 75 areas that looks to address some of those points that were raised in recruitment, progression and specialisation of women in the organisation. We're not just looking at how women enter into those roles. We have equally been looking at some of the blocks or obstacles women face within the workforce, more generally speaking. And Chief has alluded to mentoring with the Women's Police Association, which we actively support, looking at peer support, training and development for women, and equally looking at issues that only women experience, so for example, the impact of menopause, or equally so across families, the impact of working whilst equally so being a mother. So there's a whole host of programs of work ongoing, and I suppose it is timely. Tomorrow is International Women's Day, which we will be celebrating, as I mentioned, many of you will. And this year, we're doing a number of things. We've a number of our female officers who are attending conferences representing us across the United Kingdom and here in Northern Ireland. Equally so, we will be publicising quite shortly a book highlighting the role of women within policing. And in November, we just celebrated 75 years of women, both police officers and police staff, and the contribution that they have played. But to summarise, the underrepresentation of women is an issue. It is one of concern to us, and there's significant work ongoing to address that issue.
Chair, just to answer the very specific question, so female representation is sitting at over 30%, which is very similar to other policing organisations across the UK, at actually 50%.
Thank you. Mervyn Storey.
Just a comment, Chief Constable, following on from some comments that were made earlier in relation to other events. I think it would be helpful, I'm sure you would agree, that those who have been the apologists for illegal organisations and have been involved in illegal terrorism, if they would, when calling for truth, openness and transparency, would maybe also tell the truth as to what is the past for us all, unfortunately, in Northern Ireland. Moving on to an issue which was in the public domain this week again, can I commend your officers and their involvement in the Multi Agency Triage Team, known as MAT, and the work was highlighted this week, particularly in reference to Inspector Barton and his team in the new pilot operating in North Down in Lisburn, which deals with an issue of mental health, and there's some 400 calls a week that are received by the police in relation to this very serious issue. And really is to ask what plans the police would have to roll this particular pilot out to other parts of Northern Ireland, given the fact that mental health knows no boundaries in jurisdiction.
No, absolutely, a very key area of work, and as we get a better understanding of policing demand, we see how that demand is exacerbated by vulnerability generally and mental health in particular. So apart from wanting to give a good service to the citizen, which should be our top priority, there is something as well about us being clever about how we use our resources, both to meet people's needs and to be able to intervene appropriately, so we're not creating more demand by inappropriate interventions. I'm going to ask Mark Hamilton of District Policing to comment, because he leads in this piece of work on our behalf.
So 70 times a day we're going to someone who's in a mental health crisis. We represent over 4.5% of our overall incident demand each year. 24,000 calls. but actually that doesn't really rely on the real thing. Most of these calls take hours and hours and hours to deal with, particularly if we then make it a detention or the mental health order, we end up in hospital with people for maybe 10, 12, sometimes 24 hours. And I think one of the records I've heard is 17 police officers in an A&E anytime. So the Multi Agency Triage Team is an attempt to try and address some of this at source. I was with the team on Saturday night, leaving earlier in the morning, and they're doing great work. So South Eastern Trust will deploy a paramedic, a couple of cops, and trained mental health nurses to go to someone in their home and to try and deal with them at the point of need without having them to get into other interventions. And it is a pilot. It's a coalition of the willing, but there are some limitations. So, for example, although the team was sitting in Castlereagh waiting to be deployed, they couldn't deploy to Belfast because Belfast Trust aren't engaged in this at present. They can only go to people who are in South Eastern Trust. The other limitation is they can't go to children and young persons because they're not going to do that either. They're wasting their talents. So, outside of the current triage area, which is the South Eastern Trust area, you'll just get the police responding normally, or with paramedics. But if there's any sense of violence or anything involved, then quite often the paramedics are told to leave, and the police then deal with it. And we're up for that, but we are getting increasingly drawn into this arena. We're deploying masses and masses of police hours, and we're not satisfied that actually police responses are the best way to deal with people in mental health crisis. We think there are better ways for us as a community to help each other when up to 1 in 5 of us could be having a mental health problem that they won't have. So my understanding is the Chief Medical Officer would be keen to extend this out across the trusts. The next one would potentially be in Belfast, but I can only quote that anecdotally. We would like to see this as a cross-trust issue. We have now, through successful work, we have a board on custody health care, which is chaired by the Private Sector Health and the Private Sector Justice, and also was the Chief's membership. We've asked for the kind of reference for that to be extended into health and justice broadly. I have set up a health and justice board now inside the PSNI, and we have a very clear aim this year to try and improve the outcomes for the public, but also improve the quality of police response, and where we can actually, with respect, reduce the police response so that more professional people come along. So if you're standing about to kill yourself, rather than just a police negotiator arriving and a police officers and a paramedic sitting there, would it be far better if as a society responded that there were mental health practitioners rushing to the scene alongside police officers, and together we had a collaborative response to get someone the help they need. I have an anecdote the other day of someone in a terrible mental health crisis who was sent to a hospital. He couldn't be examined because they were so because of their behaviour, so they were sent to a police station. They were then taken to the police station, where they were assessed and then released. And then 2 days later, they were taken to the hospital again, and the hospital couldn't or wouldn't assess them, and then taken back to the police station again. So this was happening on an hour-by-hour basis in Northern Ireland. So we're trying very hard, Mervyn. I think it's a big bit of work this year. We're after the private section about how the board can help us. This is critical areas where we as a community come together to lead these around responses for people who are in desperate need.
Paul Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Constable, we are just 3 weeks away from the date scheduled for a UK exit from the EU. Now, we know that the PSNI has been given a sum of 16.5 million to manage whatever situation unfolds, but from the papers we've been given, that's not until the year 2019-20. So, 2 questions. Firstly, what happens in the interim in the 3 weeks ago? And secondly, have you done scenario planning for both a soft Brexit, a hard Brexit, or a complete crash-out Brexit? And if it is to be a crash-out Brexit, are the resources enough?
Well, EU exit affects all of us as a team, but we do have a structure to try to get some sort of a route around it and to prevent duplication and make sure people are responsible and therefore held to account. So, Senior Responsible work for EU preparations for the organisation is the Deputy Chief Constable. On the sort of operational stuff, as we move towards what Brexit date, whatever that's going to be, looks like, the operational response, the resourcing, the logistics, all of that is sitting with ACC Hamilton. And then the longer term strategic piece around powers and policy and implications for data sharing and criminal justice measures and all the rest of it sits with ACC mayors. So, like all good chief constables, I'm going to get the people who actually know what they're talking about to answer this question. It is something that it consumes, I would say, part of all of our days, every day, and certainly meetings that I'm engaged with across government departments at a very senior level and even into Whitehall, even in my time and efforts on this. Of course, the common thing will not be a surprise to anybody is that there is so much uncertainty, unknowns around this that it makes it difficult to plan for in a very specific way. But I'm assured, and hopefully with the response you're about to hear, you will be assured as a board that I think we're in as good a place as we can be, given all the uncertainty that is befalling us politically around EU exit.
So I'll start off, Paul, and then my colleagues can chip in. So we have been engaged in extensive planning for EU exit, really for about a year now. Tim Mayers kicked it off, then I joined him, and latterly Mark has joined us, and we're the three chief officers with responsibilities that the chief has outlined. We did get some money this year. It was small seed money. It has amounted to around £800,000 in different instalments over the course of this current financial year that's coming to an end. And that has allowed us to create an internal team within PSNI that has, on a day-to-day basis, led a lot of the forging work and the building of relationships across the various other departments, a lot of the head scratching and the thinking, a lot of the outreach, indeed, with HMG and Whitehall departments. That team has sat under ACC mayors. So a lot of the work, for example, in relation to powers and policies, one of the concerns if we had a disorganised exit would be what would we do with the issues of powers and policies. We enjoy quite a considerable toolkit of European justice and home affairs measures. The one that's most often talked about is the European arrest warrant, but there's a whole host of tools there. For example, access to criminal records, access to biometric data, access to alerts, wanted persons. So we have been working with the rest of, I suppose, British policing in GB in trying to ensure that there's a joined up, interconnected piece of work about looking what would the fallback positions be in the event that we lost those, and a lot of that work has been taken on by Tim's team. But clearly some of the concerns that we also have, if you have a disorganised exit, if you were to have, for example, different tariff regimes or anything that created the ability for organised crime to step into that space and make money. We obviously have organised crime across border now, but if there's the ability to make more money, more people will get involved, groups will engage in that to a greater extent, and we need to be match fit to respond to that. So a lot of the work in trying to ensure our operational readiness for that has been led by Mark Hamilton, and that would include a lot of work with Garrett. Obviously during the last year we've also put in a business case, and we've received, as your question outlined, 16.5 million. We believe that will allow us to recruit about a total of 308 additional officers and a small number of staff for Brexit. We did proceed at risk, and that risk has been absorbed within our finance with DOJ's concurrence to try and recruit an additional 102 by the end of this financial year, leaving 206 additional to recruit next year. So that means our recruitment pattern will probably be 500 plus next year. The 300 or so to stand still with just retirements and cessations, and then the additional 200 to make up the total 308 additional Brexit. The lion's share of those resources will go into local policing under Mark's command. Some need to go into training because we're increasing our capacity for training. We At this point in time, we are content that if this 16.5 million represents true additionality, and we're 3 weeks away from the new financial year and we still don't have absolute clarity on what our budget is for next year, but 16.5 million additionality that we can invest solely in Brexit, we're content as far as we are sit at the moment that represents an adequate level of resource. Obviously, there's so much uncertainty associated with Brexit that you'll not be surprised that whenever we wrote the business case, we did caveat it that if Brexit turned out to be perhaps at a level of degree more difficult than we anticipate, that we may have to come back and seek additional resource. But we will do that very responsibly and professionally, and we'll obviously keep the board fully informed if that was the case. But as things stand at the minute, we believe that the resource, if it is additionality, will be adequate to meet our needs.
Even if it is a no deal.
Yes, even if it is, our bid was for both deal and no deal. So we are content that the level of resource that represents additionality, and we're putting in the recruitment plans for next year so that we can do that, and that will be appropriate. And indeed myself and the ACC are meeting this coming Monday to actually get into a little bit more granular detail exactly where those officers and staff will all be positioned.
As we're going to have a public seminar, Brexit, if you didn't mind, we'll leave the rest of that for the seminar, because I think there's enough interest there to whet the appetite, not to cause offence to you, because you'll be the chief man, I assume, whenever we come to that. And that'll be happening in a couple of weeks, so if you're happy enough, we'll move on to the next question. Thank you. Colm McKenna.
Chair, thank you. Chief Constable, the Chair alluded to this at the start of the meeting in terms of budget, and it's beyond disappointing that 3 weeks ago, the new financial year, you didn't your budget. Many other public bodies are expecting flat cash, i.e. expected to live on what they had last year, and that may well end up the case with PSNI. That would probably result in about 3% pressure, is our understanding. What are your plans, and what issues will you, how will you address that, should that come to pass?
Well, I think for the interest of time, Chair, we'll just go straight to the Director of Finance, Mark. Respond to that, right?
He's there.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, so through the Chair, we haven't got our formal budget confirmation, as you say, but we're hopeful we'll get that very soon indeed. We'll also be hopeful that it'll be slightly better than flat cash. We know that the department benefited from some additional funding, so we would expect that to come with policing as well. And in terms of what impact that might have, you're right, we have, I suppose, an anticipated pressure of around 3% or so, just to kind of keep going. And with that little bit of uplift, and with a sharing risk with the department in relation to some other pressures, we think that should at least enable us to maintain our services, and in particular the headcount and the officers, so that this additional money that we've heard talked about in relation to EU exit preparations, and also maybe some other work around legacy inquest, that represents true additionality to the service. So I think in summary, money is tight, and we would have liked to get a better settlement, and we anticipate it will not be as good as what we had hoped for. But there are plans in place that I think will keep a stable service and will enable us at least to continue lobbying for the investment we think the service needs over the next year.
The last word to you, Dolores, but we have a quick.
That was a quick question. It's really about cyber security, Chief Constable, and the police's ability to fight crime in that cyberspace, particularly given recent reports from the NCA and others, the increased level of human trafficking, the child exploitation, and that more children are at risk from online grooming than they are in communities. And also, of course, we acknowledge and are very concerned about the ability to sell prescription drugs, if you like, or illegal drugs through the dark web. And I just wonder about the police's readiness and whether or not you have cyber experts within your employment as opposed to police officers. Maybe could do a wee bit tonight.
Well, we need both actually to answer the last part of your question, because we need first responders, operational police officers at ground level, to be probably much more familiar than I am with how to do evidential capture online and all of that, because that is where crime is shifting to more and more. And of course with that comes huge under-reporting, and so therefore when it is reported we need to be able to respond appropriately. So I think our capability around cybercrime investigators and policing is good. I think it probably still needs to grow more. And in fact there are 4 areas of growth that whilst we get probably less money in the future taking inflationary pressures, we want to grow our capabilities around cybercrime, our cyber capabilities really, not just crime, but everything around that. Public protection, which includes your reference to things like child sexual exploitation, human trafficking, child abuse online, all of that. Critical neighbourhoods, and making sure we get the reassurance and the confidence into the neighbourhoods that deserve and that need a high-profile police presence. And then the 4th area is an internal one around our officer well-being and making sure that we do the occupational health. And just recently, the Deputy has authorised growth within occupational health. So the short piece is we do have the capabilities, the expertise internally. You're right, you don't need to be a police officer to be a cyber expert. In fact, that might be their own skill set, but we do need police officers to have a level of awareness around navigating their way through cyber, to capture evidence, to protect people, to do the safeguarding, and to be responsive. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think probably just to highlight, there has been significant investment into our own cyber capability. Our cyber centre is one of the leading centres across the entire UK policing and is recognised nationally as such. And I think just those links that are made through the capability of the officers, the links with the National Crime Agency, who have a wider international reach as well, are very, very strong, and that brings us into all of those worlds of fraud, of child sexual abuse, of human trafficking, and we are actively investigating all of those things on a daily basis.
So that concludes the meeting. Thank you all for your responses and your time. The next meeting, public meeting of the board will be on Thursday, the 4th of April.